The wagon's wheels churned up clouds of dust that stung Sarah's eyes as it vanished down the valley. She stood rooted to the frozen ground, her single trunk at her feet, staring at the weathered cabin that loomed like a sentence. The February wind sliced through her thin shawl, sharp as betrayal. Behind her the valley stretched vast and unforgiving, a gray expanse that swallowed sound and hope alike. Her brother-in-law's words echoed in her skull. "You've shamed us, Sarah. Let the hermit deal with your disgrace." A figure emerged from the cabin's shadowed porch. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hands scarred from years of labor and eyes that carried the weight of distrust, Jacob studied her. His face was lined, not just by age, but by a life that had taught him to expect betrayal. Sarah lifted her chin, her pride a fragile shield against the cold and his scrutiny. Neither spoke at first, two wary creatures sizing up a threat. "I didn't ask for this," Jacob said at last, his voice rough as the gravel underfoot. "Neither did I," Sarah replied, her tone sharp despite the tremor in her hands. He shifted, glancing at the horizon as if it might explain her presence. "Your family's playing a game I don't understand, but I won't be their pawn." Sarah's fingers tightened around the strap of her trunk, rage burning hotter than the cold. Her husband's family had discarded her like refuse, blaming her for his death, for the lack of a son, for the grief she carried like a second skin. They'd sent her to this nowhere place to disappear. She met Jacob's gaze, refusing to beg. "Do what you will. I'm here now." He gestured toward a barn across the yard, avoiding her eyes. "Sleep there. I'll figure this out by morning." She hauled her trunk to the barn, its weight nothing compared to the fury in her chest. The door creaked shut behind her, sealing her in with the scent of hay and horses. In the dim light filtering through warped boards, she arranged a bed of straw, her hands shaking not from cold, but from the vow forming in her throat. Clutching her late husband's wedding ring, the only piece of him his family hadn't stripped away, she whispered to the darkness, "I'll survive this winter. Then I'll vanish where none of them can find me." She didn't cry. Tears had long since stopped changing anything. 4 days later, the blizzard struck like a fist. Sarah had been fetching water from the stream when the storm rolled in, a white wall that erased the world. Pride kept her from knocking on Jacob's door. Stubbornness kept her moving through the snow until her legs gave out against the barn's frozen frame. Her lips were blue, her mind slipping when Jacob found her. "Damn fool," he muttered, short words lost in the howling wind. He carried her to the cabin, her slight frame heavy with ice, and laid her by the hearth. Forcing hot broth past her lips, he watched her resist even in her half-frozen state, pride warring with survival. Hours passed, the fire snapping as the storm raged outside. Slowly, color returned to her face, pale to pink, death retreating. When her eyes fluttered open, shame and gratitude flickered across her features. "Why help me?" Her voice was barely audible. Jacob poked at the fire, avoiding her gaze. "Winter doesn't care about our grudges." She pulled the blanket tighter, studying the cabin's stark interior. One room, functional, devoid of warmth or memory, a place where softness had been banished. "I won't be a burden," she said. "Then don't freeze to death in my barn again." His tone was blunt, but he laid out terms like a contract. She could stay through spring, help with chores, cooking, mending, preparing the garden. Come April, he'd give her his horse and supplies to start over somewhere new, far from her family's reach. "They won't take you back," he added, his honesty brutal. "But you'll have a chance elsewhere." Sarah weighed his words, not trusting but needing. "I accept." That night she slept on a bedroll by the hearth, the storm screaming outside. Two strangers shared the small space, neither admitting the quiet relief of no longer being entirely alone. Survival demanded cooperation, and spring felt a lifetime away. 3 weeks later, Sarah's hand brushed something unexpected while reaching for a pot in the cupboard, a small wooden horse, carved with delicate care, its mane and legs worn smooth by tiny hands. She froze, transfixed by its craftsmanship, when Jacob entered. His face hardened to stone, the air growing heavy with unspoken pain. "My son," he said after a long silence. Fever took him 5 years ago. His mother, too. Sarah's throat tightened. She placed the horse back with reverence, as if it might break. Her voice cracked when she spoke. My husband died in a mine collapse 2 years ago. His family blamed me. No heir, no son. They said I cursed him. She met Jacob's eyes. They sent me here to suffer more, as if I hadn't already lost everything. Jacob poured coffee with deliberate slowness, handing her a cup, the first gesture beyond necessity. You're here because they're cruel. I took you in because I know what it's like to be buried by loss. They sat at the small table, hands wrapped around warm mugs, silent with the weight of shared grief. The moment shifted something fundamental. They couldn't unsee each other's humanity. Outside, the first signs of thaw appeared, ice dripping from the eaves, the sun marginally warmer. Inside, something fragile began to stir. That night, Sarah moved her bedroll closer to the hearth, to the shared space. Jacob noticed, but said nothing. The barn door stayed closed. The wooden horse now sat on the shelf, no longer hidden. A quiet acknowledgement of pasts laid bare. By April, the valley bloomed with tentative green, and Sarah knelt in the garden, hands in soil that smelled of hope. She realized with a jolt that she wasn't just surviving, she was building. Domestic rhythms had formed. She mended Jacob's worn shirts, organized the chaotic cabin. He taught her to shoot his rifle, sighting wolves and worse. Small acts of care accumulated. She left coffee hot for his dawn rounds. He brought wildflowers one morning, placing them awkwardly in a jar. Cabin needed life, he muttered. One evening, a chicken escaped, leading them on an absurd chase through the yard. They collapsed against the fence, breathless with laughter, a sound so rare it startled them both. For a moment, the weight of their pasts lifted, then hoofbeats broke the peace. Tom, their nearest neighbor, arrived with supplies and judgment. Heard about your arrangement, he said, barely glancing at Sarah. Town's talking. Marcus has been stirring folks up. His family's got influence. Jacob's face darkened. People always got opinions about what ain't their business. After Tom left, the warmth vanished. Sarah stood at the window, her voice tight. I'm poison to you too. I should leave before I ruin you. Jacob was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. I stopped caring what they think years ago. Question is, what do you want? She turned, meeting his eyes. I don't know anymore. That night, she watched him repair fence posts under moonlight, his silhouette patient and resolute. Touching her reflection in the window, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Stronger, alive. But fear crept in. What if caring for him is the cruelest thing I can do? Thunder woke them like a cannon, and Sarah's scream tore through the cabin. Jacob found her curled tight, trapped in memory, her eyes seeing the mine collapse that took her husband. Rain pounded the roof. Lightning lit her terror. Hesitating, Jacob touched her shoulder. Sarah, you're here. You're safe. She clung to him, words spilling out. Her husband's screams, the silence that followed. Jacob held her, uncertain but steady. Fever took my family while I was away, he said quietly. I still hear my boy calling some nights. Dawn found them still talking, about guilt that lingered like a shadow, about the terrifying prospect of loving again. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her, not passion but recognition. I feel like I'm betraying Thomas by being happy, Sarah whispered. It doesn't fade, Jacob said. But you learn to carry both, grief and joy. Morning light softened the cabin. Working the garden later, their hands brushed, lingering. The connection was undeniable, terrifying. Sarah's heart opened against her will. Jacob felt the same fear, loving someone who could be lost again. Then dust announced riders. Marcus dismounted, flanked by 2 hired men, his face a mask of righteous fury. You've shamed us further living as this man's woman, he declared. The family demands you return, work our land under supervision. Jacob stepped forward. She owes you nothing. She's free. Sarah's voice shook but held. I choose to stay. You sent me here to suffer. Jacob gave me back my life. Marcus's rage flared. You think this hermit will protect you? He couldn't save his own family from God's judgment. Don't you dare use his child to justify your cruelty, Sarah snapped. The hired men shifted, uneasy. Marcus mounted his horse, his threat lingering. This isn't over. Harassment followed. A brick crashed through the window at midnight, a note tied to it. Sinners burn. The town turned hostile. Stores refused service. Whispers trailed them. Jacob swept glass with fraying calm. Maybe you'd be safer away from me. Sarah's fury flared. I chose you. Don't take that from me. But alone, she doubted. Packing her bag, she planned to leave at dawn to spare him. Yet morning found Jacob repairing the window, his quiet persistence a rebuke to her fear. She unpacked. They planned to face the town together at church, to claim their bond publicly. Sunday came. Hand in hand, they entered the church, silence louder than any curse. Marcus stood condemning them. Jacob responded, voice steady. Her family wanted her to disappear. We built something honest instead. Sarah added, I choose him. I choose our home. The minister spoke of forgiveness, and though some left in disgust, others stayed. Marcus lunged at Jacob, but the sheriff intervened. This ends, Marcus. 6 weeks later, married quietly, Sarah and Jacob stood in their doorway, her hand on her belly. We're having a baby, she said. Fear and joy warred in his eyes. We'll teach them family is who you choose, she said. They stood at sunset, the garden blooming, the wooden horse gleaming on the shelf. You're my treasure, Jacob said. Sarah smiled. We saved each other. The valley glowed green, their home a testament to love built from brokenness, a story just beginning.